Hi everybody and welcome to another edition of Bina007 movie reviews with what feels now like my typical collaborator, Beric157, aka Matthieu.
Hi everyone.
And Matthieu, as you all should know by now, is also a regular contributor on VOK podcast, which is Vassals of Kingsgrave, a home for all things geeky. But today we are going to discuss, while watching the DVD version of Shekhar Kapur's 1998 movie Elizabeth, I can't quite believe it's that old, which stars Cate Blanchett as Queen Elizabeth I of England and is truly a remarkable and unjustly not Academy Award-winning movie, but we can probably get into that as we discuss. So for those of you playing along at home, I'm going to count 3, 2, 1, go just to the start of the movie, Matthieu, so hopefully we'll be synced up when I so do. So 3, 2, 1, play.
Oh yeah, the Universal logo.
So I'm going to turn this down now. But hopefully you guys are on the Universal logo, and yeah, off we go.
I was always wondering, like, is it just a coincidence that it's on America when it fades away? Like, because it's an American studio, maybe they want to say, like, yeah.
It's deliberate, isn't it?
Yeah. Did the logo change in the meantime? Because it's like an old film, right? I think they had a different one in they had older films and stuff, but
oh, okay.
In the meantime, I'm not sure if they changed it a lot. I'm not sure if they changed it around or something. But oh yeah, there she is, Cate Blanchett. I think this was her first nomination, right?
Yes, and unjustly not given, I think.
Yeah, I don't recall which film which actress won that year over Cate Blanchett.
It was Gwyneth Paltrow for Shakespeare in Love.
Oh my god!
And I was very, very annoyed that year because Shakespeare in Love I think it got Best Film again as well, and I really, really wanted Cate Blanchett to win, and I feel that their subsequent careers have justified my faith in Cate Blanchett.
Yeah, but Geoffrey Rush is in both of them, so
yeah. And Geoffrey Rush was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, but also lost out.
Yeah.
So that was a shame.
But Shakespeare in Love is not a bad movie. Like
it's not a bad movie at all. It's a romantic confection to me. It doesn't have the weight of Elizabeth, and certainly Cate Blanchett, I think, was definitely the better of the two actresses.
Yeah. And here we see like burnings at the order of Mary Tudor, Bloody Mary. Which, I think she was the most hated British monarch ever. So.
Yeah, and maybe unfairly so. It's kind of interesting. At the moment, I'm reading a historical fiction novel called The Taming of the Queen by Philippa Gregory, who's probably most famous for writing about the English Civil War, the Cousins' War. But it's basically about the wife, Catherine, who outlives Henry VIII, so the only wife who outlived him. And she kind of raises or brings together his 3 children, Edward, Mary, and Elizabeth, when they're young teenagers. Well, Elizabeth's a teenager and Mary's like a young 20-year-old. And it's kind of really altered my impressions of the two of them. I think Mary's maybe, I don't know, unjustly hated.
Yeah, I think that there's a similar thing happening with when you talk about people like Robespierre, these are people who are who have different facets to the. I mean, they're real people, so it's like they're not one-dimensional people. They're not one-dimensional villains or heroes who always make the just decisions. In that it just happens that in both cases they murdered. They killed, thousands of people.
Yeah, and so obviously, I mean, this is a very brutal scene of people being burnt at the stake, and I don't want to sound like I'm condoning that.
No.
But I just think it's kind of, when you look at it from the time, and I think in her head, this wasn't a callous, she didn't do it out of a callous lust for power. This was coming from genuine belief that it was for the good of England, and actually for the good of these people. I mean, it wasn't a cynical political move.
No, it was because she believed these people were heretical, and not sharing her religion, which she was convicted was the true religion, and which I think she had many she was obviously not shared. I mean, her opinion was obviously not shared by her father, and that's so.
But it's important to point out that she had the world on her side. I mean, at this point, Protestantism is tiny, and she had the backing of the Pope, of major powers, of Spain, of France. The majority of the world thinks as she does, so it's not unsurprising that she acts in. Oh, beautiful! I just love the way Shekhar Kapur puts the camera right at the top of these architraves, so you look down and see the true splendor of that medieval architecture.
Yeah, and here we see Norfolk.
Yes.
Played by, what's his name?
Christopher Eccleston?
Yes. Who says that he never does the same kind of movie twice, apparently. He always plays in one kind of movie. And he always moves on to something else. Because I think that's why when he was part of the Marvel universe or something, he was obviously not going to come back for another one.
And even Doctor Who, I was amazed that he took that part. But I love this because it shows immediately, although it's not about Elizabeth, it's about Mary, but that a woman's fertility is everything. And it's not private, it's a totally public thing. And that, just as Mary is going to be judged on this basis, so will Elizabeth be. So this is weird because Queen Mary is played by Cate Blanchett, who in England is known for being an amazing, probably one of our greatest comedic actresses. And for many people, seeing her cast in this serious, almost tragic role was it was kind of jarring when I first saw it. And on subsequent viewings of the film, I realised how good she is. But at the start, I can't take it seriously. It's Cate Blanchett. She's going to crack a joke.
Because me not being familiar with a lot of British comedy, besides some of the more famous sitcoms, that for example never really was an issue because she plays it well.
Exactly, and that's I guess what someone like a Shekhar Kapur can bring to this. He can cast it with a totally neutral eye.
Yeah, shame that the sequel wasn't as good though.
Yeah. This is true.
So and also this actor, he wasn't he on Jeremy Brett's Sherlock Holmes as well? He used to play
yes.
well. So lots of famous people, which I think if you have a historical drama, you want actors that people can recognize because the people that they're playing are not, they're not familiar to everyone. So you might need a recognizable face to sort of get the idea. Oh yeah, I remember. He plays this guy, and he's doing this, or And here we have a total contrast to the earlier, darkly lit rooms and that sort of thing, and then the horrible death. We get the private life of Elizabeth I, who at this point is still considered a illegitimate child of Henry, and it's
actually tragic, I think, because she's in a way she's isolated. She's not at court, and actually the thing I've always found weird is that in the previous scene you've got Queen Mary basically calling for her execution in a trial, and I'm not sure that truly would have happened. I mean, it's always been interesting to me that when Queen, I don't know, I just, they are sisters at the end of the day. Joseph Fiennes, whatever happened to him? He never really did much after this, did he?
Oh no, he did. No, that's true. I don't recall. I've seen him in something else as well.
Well, Shakespeare in Love, but
Shakespeare.
It almost felt like he had these two
movies. It should have been just like one film, like you can just switch out the actors immediately. But it's really, it's really sad that he's like the less famous Jake Gyllenhaal. I feel like Jake Gyllenhaal managed to get noticed.
I just find it weird though. He was in these two mega movies, both Oscar winning, and then I wonder if he just decided to do theatre instead, or I don't know. It's just strange seeing that he's just completely slipped away.
I just realized that we're 10 minutes in. We're almost 10 minutes into the film, and there's still credits rolling.
Yeah.
people. It's still the introduction, so it's like, this is a really epic scale, so that's why it deserves it. And I guess I enjoy the actors' chemistry here very much, because it's very they play off each other in a very, very innocent, romantic relationship sort of way, and that's
gosh, Sir John Gielgud's still alive.
Yeah. I like the
costume as well. Just look at his shirt. I mean, it's beautifully done.
Yeah, I wish that there was a movie where you have. I mean, I wish someday they would make a movie about armor. How it changes with people in different time periods, and how it changes over time. Because I really like that sort of idea that it's not. It's a very, very specific period.
Indeed. So here we have Emily Mortimer, soon to be very famous actress herself, as the Lady in Waiting, probably one of her earliest roles.
Mm-hmm. And now Elizabeth is being summoned to court, right? So it's
yes.
And I mean, Cate Blanchett, she looks so young. When you look at her now,
she is a lot younger. I mean, it's amazing to me. I mean, this film is 17 years old now?
Yeah.
So, but yes, she plays younger than she is. I mean, just great actress. She has the amazing way of making her face look utterly vulnerable. It's like, if you think of this film, she goes from being utterly very girlish, very naive, very frail, to being this militaristic virgin queen, and it's just true. I mean, I don't understand how you don't give this the Best Actress award. It's such a journey. It's such an arc,
And now, I mean, nowadays she's more known to, play very serious, very stern kind of women, right? Because obviously the way that this character goes in the film is actually, the same way she ends up being in a completely different emotional place, in a very, very, very stern kind of ruler.
Oh my goodness!
And I guess that's also. I mean, that's why that's probably been a career-defining role in some way. Because
she comes from a theatre background, doesn't she? And isn't her husband a theatre director? So I suppose that serious intent is there. This is very much like a horror movie, I think, being brought into the Tower of London through the Traitor's Gate. Seeing the heads on spikes. It's brilliant direction.
And when they corner her, and accuse her of heresy and of treason and that sort of thing, it's
and very similar in the camera position to when they had the three men being burnt at the stakes overhead, and these three clerics circling her.
Yeah.
I love the way Shekhar Kapur often seems to me a little bit like a ballet director. Like he always has this very, like most directors frame 2D, like they're very careful in a tableau where they want things to be, but he always seems to me to have this very 3D view of space, over, under, everywhere. It's
really
tremendous.
Front and behind, and
we should do more English cinema or English language cinema.
And here they say, I mean, obviously, she tries to take the middle road by saying that she wants both religions to be living equally beside each other, and that's not
the small question of religion.
Right? Yeah, the small question of religion, which is like, this is the society-defining conflict, and in some people's minds today, it still is. So it's like, this sort of very narrow-minded approach to religious debates is just something that people just accepted.
I often wonder how realistic this depiction of her is. Very naive and diplomatic it really is. I mean, this is a woman who, as we said, she grew up in the Tudor court, seeing her mother being executed for being a whore and heresy and witchcraft. And would she really be so naive as this? I think that, if anything, at such a young age, she'd be even more cynical and wily than the average girl. And, very well educated, a good Tudor princess. So very, very, very clever.
But at the same time, I think for the film, it's necessary maybe to.
Oh, for sure, because you need the arc.
Sure. Yeah. And I wonder who the other woman is with, who the actress is. Who plays the woman next to Mary Tudor here. Because they're not. I mean, I don't think that. I mean, we all know Peter Dinklage, but other actors who are,
Peter Dinklage is one of those guys who's been in more things than you think. He often crops up in films, and you're just like, oh,
yeah, you definitely recognize him. But other actors in that same position, I would say that they sadly don't get as much recognition for the roles.
No, I agree.
Which is why I'm so sad that the people who played the robots in Silent Running.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a sci-fi film, right? I think the robots there were played by little people, and yeah, I don't think that there is that they were they're sort of slightly limited because people generally don't cast them in main roles and that sort of.
Okay.
They should, I guess. It's what I'm saying. So it's.
So here comes Norfolk intent. Elizabeth genuinely believes she's going to be killed.
Yeah. And Elizabeth, entering the room of the Queen, obviously.
I mean, I have to believe, and maybe this is my Philippa Gregory influence, that as much as each recognise the other as a threat politically, that at the end of the day, killing your own sister, from opposing factions, but deeply Christian women, would just be one step too far.
I guess, yeah.
I mean, I think we forget how deeply religious people were in those days. Like, without cynicism, it just imbued their life.
Yeah, Mary Tudor was very. I mean, she was a very very, very devout Catholic. I mean, but I guess that kind of position has been mostly ingrained in her because of her mother, and also because of the hardships that she had to live through.
Sorry to interrupt, but don't you think when you see this picture you're seeing Mary Tudor kind of half in darkness in the shadow, it always reminds me of in La Reine Margot, the first time you see Catherine de Medici.
Oh,
She's very much in shadow, and then she sort of turns her face and dressed all in black leather, like in mourning.
It's also sort of the idea that one of them is of a pure heart, whereas the other one is always in the shadows and not really. She's cast in, at least in that small moment, as a figure of darkness, I would say, and then that's this dangerous woman who is basically almost who will almost commit murder of her own family member.
Yeah. I mean, she's so wrong to say, I see nothing of my father in you. I mean, Elizabeth looked more like her father than anyone else. It's so sad. I mean, She
also says, when she says that her husband has abandoned her because she was not considered an attractive woman necessarily at the time, because she was already, I think she was wasn't she around 50 or 40 years?
Yes, yeah.
I suppose, and she wasn't considered attractive, I guess, by her husband in a way. So it's very much a political arrangement, if anything. And she says that they poisoned her child and that sort of thing because she doesn't actually believe that it might be a tumor. So it's really, those are really sad things which you might feel. These are all kind of, this is stress adding on top of everything else. So it's not really helping in her decision making, which is probably, there are lots of reasons why she ordered people to be killed, but I guess it's like it's not a really happy life that she has.
No, so actually, it's probably worth just pointing out that this is, when is this? This is 1558. Let me try and remember my school history. That Elizabeth first came to the throne, and St. Bartholomew's Day massacre is 1570s, 1580s. So these two films, Lorraine Margot and Elizabeth, are broadly speaking the same period of history.
Yeah, more or less.
Maybe 20 years difference.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it's very interesting.
Architecture, look at that backdrop.
Yeah, I just, I wish more sets were, I mean, I feel like nowadays they would probably make most of this CG, because it's just, it's probably cheaper to shoot it in front of a green screen than, going on location.
Is it really?
I don't know.
I would have thought it'd be cheaper just to do it on location.
I don't know, because you might. I mean, if you're filming in a real castle or something, that's you might have to rent. You need to rent that kind of space for a long time. Probably it's not.
True.
It's not probably easy. Whereas if you're doing it on a green screen, you can just shoot any way you want, and then impose it in the background. But yeah, obviously it would look far less convincing.
Yeah, and the lighting is brilliant. I love the way that mistake of doing sort of very bright modern lighting. He keeps it very dark lit, and he has all the live flames. It's just so atmospheric.
Yeah, it's still no Barry Lyndon, because Barry Lyndon was filmed like with candlelight.
I love Barry Lyndon. Do you love? We need to do a commentary on that.
It's my favorite Kubrick film.
Really, me too. We should totally do that.
Yeah, we should totally do that.
And much maligned. I don't understand why people don't like it more.
People don't like the main. Maybe they don't like the main actor. I guess is what they do. But it's. I think that's part of the point of the film. But yeah.
Anyway, so here comes Walsingham, who compared to Norfolk, who's all uptight and annoying, is just such a don. He's just this like louche. I'm going to stand back with my hands behind the head. I'm just really relaxed. I don't fear anyone trying to kill me. I'm just awesome.
Basically, complete. I mean, because he's abroad, he doesn't have to necessarily be afraid of any. He doesn't feel like he has to be afraid of anything. But he obviously convinces the boy to not kill him. Obviously.
It's one of the best screen entrances, I think.
Yeah, and famous mistake, because obviously, he's not going to leave the boy alive.
Yeah, of course. But it's brilliant. It just shows you exactly what this man is.
Yeah. Which I think he was obviously very important, at least early on in Elizabeth's reign, right? That's
absolutely. I mean, he kept her on the throne, I think. No doubt.
Oh, and here's another actor who is sadly... is he... I don't know. I don't recall who I saw him before. The man Elizabeth is talking to in the...
I think you're about 30 seconds ahead of me.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yes.
I'm just still watching this poor chap with his throat getting slit.
Oh,
and it's wonderful, actually, because you don't see it. The camera just moves up and then back down, and you realise.
And then you see the red cut on the throat.
Yeah, it's just very stylish. So subtle. So who her confessor is? Isn't this Sir John Gill? No. This is Richard Attenborough, isn't it?
It could be, yes.
Is it Richard Attenborough?
I thought at first, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, check. Oh, yeah.
So he's playing, what's his name? The Aristo. Kingmaker. The same family as the Kingmakers.
I'm going to check.
Anyway.
Richard, it's William Cecil.
That's it. It's William Cecil.
Mm-hmm.
Which I always thought was a little bit, not miscast or misrepresented, but he kind of is, because it's Sir Richard Attenborough, I think he's sort of played as a sort of an avuncular character, a lovely, warm-hearted, reassuring, old, doddering man.
Yeah, mostly.
And I get the impression that the real one was a wily, sort of mean, cynical, sort of, what can I say?
Could be. Could have become cynical later on. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But
here we get the first of the many, many marriage proposals.
Yeah.
James Frayne, who I've always think is a very interesting actor. He isn't as famous as maybe he should be, but a really great actor.
Yeah, his role is not. He's not that big in this film, is he? So it's.
No.
But
the key thing is Mary on her deathbed going to kill her sister.
Yeah, she isn't. She just covers her ears and just...
Yeah, but 2 seconds before you're going to meet your maker, you don't want to have blood in your hands.
Yeah, it's not just that. It's because she feels like, all these people, they've always been telling me what I should do, and what they've always tried to advise me on what I'm going to do. I'm gonna. Maybe she's just deciding not to make a decision. So she's just like, I'm not bothered. I'm not gonna do anything. So.
Jealous boyfriend.
Yeah. And yeah, it's also very. I mean, he's at least from historical accounts, like they were obviously very close, but I mean, she never. I mean, she was. I mean, in the end,
don't people think they did have? I mean, she wasn't a virgin, was she? So
I'm not. Yeah, I don't. I can't think that she actually was, but. Maybe she was. I don't know. It's that's the thing.
I think the important thing to note here is that it is valid that the king of Spain would only spend 2 or 3 times a year in her bed, because at that point England just wasn't a power. It wasn't a great power. So for Spain, it would just be seen as another territory, like taking over the Low Countries or whatever, as just part of the empire.
Yeah.
And
obviously, Mary is going to die.
Yep.
And so, yeah, they're going to take off the ring and give it to her sister. Which Norfolk doesn't approve of at all. So it's, I mean...
Yeah, but it is what it is. I mean, it's the line of succession, so eat it.
Norfolk was also, I mean, because I recently watched The Tudors, I also thought, I mean...
okay.
The first 2 episodes of The Tudors of the first season, and I thought the guy who played, I mean, Norfolk was also Duke of Buckingham, wasn't he?
Was he?
At least during Henry VIII, wasn't he?
Okay, maybe.
So I mean, when now I wouldn't. I don't know. I'm not sure. So it's just I was wondering, because when I always hear like Duke of Buckingham, I always think of the Three Musketeers and that sort of thing. It's like I don't know, all these things come together. It's that's why I like historical dramas, especially when they're this big, because it makes you want to read about history and
exactly.
Discover
and like you say, connect the dots. Like connect this to La Reine Margot and the religious strife, and then what it all hangs together. Oh, here we go, Walsingham. No more girls chattering for Princess Elizabeth now she is queen.
No, the queen is dead. Long live the queen.
This is the last happy day, isn't it? The last day of carefree neglect, I suppose one could say.
And yeah, she doesn't know how to react to this, right? It's
very strange to me. I mean, because it must have been something she thought of as she knew Queen Mary was ill, and without an hour, it must have been something that she'd pondered in her heart.
Yeah. But then again, I watched a documentary on all the English kings, and and queens, and the succession and everything, and it's weird how much of a I mean, they really try to find loopholes to get to get to be king or queen of England, obviously, because at some point you might have to go back into the family of one of
like Lady Jane Grey, right? But actually, let's just talk about, like, as she walks out of the house as queen, the light becomes this blinding white.
Yes.
And then I love the tableau. This is very Barry Lyndon, that you have this huge old oak tree with its circumference 3-4 feet. And then you have this tiny, tiny little figure that is the queen, and then all these, like, the ladies in waiting arranged and the soldiers arranged to bow to her, and then it flashes back to white. I think it's really so beautiful the way that's done, and so significant to have this big, big oak tree next to this frail girl.
and she obviously doesn't know how to respond to it. Right? It's
Yeah.
like you get handed the keys to the kingdom, and you're not sure what you're supposed to do now.
And the coronation done by Norfolk, he's her least favourite courtier. Oh, beautiful coronation scene.
Yeah, to the north I present to you, yeah.
All extras. This always reminds me a little bit of the wedding scene at the start of Laura and Margot.
Yes! Again,
very strong and red,
yeah, very strong parallels, I guess. They must have been looking at each other going, we... the films, they also didn't they come out around the same time as well? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think so. It was obviously a great time for medieval historical films.
Today, not so much. This is one of the last ones that I recall, really.
We need more.
Yeah, definitely. And not just about, maybe we can do something about, I don't know, I would love to see a real film about, something like, Vlad the Impaler or whatever.
Oh, this is amazing.
Very interesting people. Even though Ivan we have a film about Ivan the Terrible. Like, we have the big Russian epic, but it's still... we have lots of other countries to explore, I guess is what I'm saying. It's mostly when you have films about royalty, it's about French royalty or English royalty.
Nothing sells as well as the Tudors.
Yeah. But, there were other kingdoms around.
I love the fact that even at this period they would still crown her as Queen of England, Ireland and France.
So even though she had no...
Even though we haven't had a claim on France since Henry VI, really. Or, so to say, territorial, position.
That's
Robert Dudley looks so smug.
Yeah, and she doesn't really... she holds the staff, obviously, she gets... and yeah, it's like, she doesn't... It's not really a happy occasion, I guess, for her.
No.
It's not really about being...
But quite a great one, I feel.
Yeah. And, when you look at paintings of Elizabeth I, it's really striking how much Cate Blanchett looks like her.
Oh, absolutely.
The royal robes on and everything. It's, I can see why they definitely chose Cate Blanchett for this role, and it obviously is even more iconic because she is such a good actress. So it's,
I love this little Sir Richard Attenborough giving basically the Basil exposition, like the 30-second for American audiences. Do you realise that England's bankrupt and desolate?
We're in bad
and
shape.
these are all the people who hate you and who are going to try and assassinate you over the next hour and a half.
Yeah. And Mary of Scots, which is also something that I always felt that, there's still something that I find a bit weird about, the French the French suitor being portrayed as a sissy or whatever, It's
I think it's definitely a creative license now.
I'm not sure. It might be, but at the same time, it's like you always. That's a stereotype. The French. Especially in American or English productions, sometimes it's like it's friendly riffing. It's like a roasting of sorts, but at the same time, it's like I wish there was more of a let's say of a diversity, I guess, in terms of portrayals of people who are not, let's say, English, or in those kinds of films, because obviously, it.
Here's Walsingham.
Oh, he is Walsingham again, but yeah, I just that's just something that I picked up.
Yeah, no, it's a good point.
Yeah.
So this is a very pivotal scene because it will be repeated later. Like the idea of her dancing with Dudley and being allowed to be held.
Yeah.
And later it will happen in a much more aggressive way when he tries to assert power.
Mm.
But you can just imagine Walsingham watching this and just not being impressed,
Yeah.
Like, this is the Queen of England. Don't allow yourself to be owned by a mere lower aristo.
Mm-hmm. Feels like, if I were I mean, if I were Walsingham, I wouldn't, just be standing there, not saying anything. I would, at least introduce myself, because why would you want other people to talk about you in a negative way? Possibly because he doesn't really. He came back from exile after all, right? So that's.
But was he really in exile, or was he in pretend exile because he was
sure.
sort of like a double agent and still working for the crown?
Could be.
He to me is like
Batman. He's Batman.
He is Batman, but he's also like not the playwright Christopher Marlowe, just one of these very shadowy figures who was certainly a spy, and we'll never truly know how they died and how they lived. There should be a film biography of Christopher Marlowe. It's like James Bond meets Shakespeare.
Oh yeah, which we'll get James Bond later this year, but we won't get a film about
Kit Marlowe. No, sadly not.
I like the way. I mean, she obviously the little emotions, like when she's getting annoyed, or when she's that sort of thing. It's not really like she can switch from from one kind of emotion to the other very, very very fluently, because in a lesser actor's hands this would have probably come across as less convincing, I guess.
Yeah, she has this amazingly plastic face, and I use plastic very advisedly, like not in the material sense, but just in that Cate Blanchett has this amazing ability to transmit emotion in a way that seems utterly authentic and pure, even when she goes from one to the other that are very opposite in a very close space of time. It's what makes her so captivating to watch, I feel.
And here we have Orlando Bloom stand-in. No, the guy who helps Walsingham, obviously. The young page is like, he looks like Orlando Bloom if he wasn't,
Yeah.
If he wasn't old, if he was younger, I guess. But
Walsingham just is such a don. He's like.
Yeah,
everyone else is just like, in Tudor England you wear your wealth on your sleeve, and Walsingham just walks in as sort of fairly plain clothes and his little cap and tiny little ruff, and he's like, yeah, whatevs. Not an issue.
And obviously Elizabeth flirting with Lord Robert.
Oh yes.
Which is not, it's really sad because he's already married, so it's like she doesn't know.
And at this point we don't know, right?
No, we don't know either. Which is, something that I always felt like whenever I watch the film, I go, oh my.
But what was he thinking? Why is he flirting with her when he knows he can't marry her? What does he expect to come of it?
Because he thinks that, he hopes.
Does he really think she's going to be his mistress as Queen of England?
Does he? No.
He's delusional.
That's how she interprets it. It's like the idea that he might probably divorce his wife.
But there's no divorce in that period, is there? Well, I suppose there is if you're Protestant, but
yeah.
The Volta scene is great, though. I think it's
yes.
So much can be communicated in the way they dance, like the kind of, I don't know, arrogance, possession. It's just incredible.
Yeah, and at least this is it's a happy moment, because otherwise there's lots of worrying to be done. And I just remember that the actress who is one of her handmaidens, she played in Boardwalk Empire, didn't she?
Yes, and Trainspotting.
Yes, that's
really
true.
Tremendous Scottish actress.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
but,
yeah.
All these all these great talents nowadays who, basically only got discovered back then, right? It's not really...
Emily Blunt, case in point.
Oh, yeah.
But the idea that there is no privacy, there will always be windows to be looked through, there will always be ladies in waiting to spy.
Yeah. And they're all... because the Queen is, property of the state, so to speak. That's, and obviously Richard Attenborough is not pleased. And yeah. And then that's obviously, when your own body is no longer your own property, that's actually more of a prison. That's why, who would want to be king or queen in
But
that
it's
kind
terrible,
of
isn't it? I mean, like, just even as he's walking in to see the Queen, he's flirting with her lady-in-waiting.
Yes. And, I mean, that's why I feel like there's a difference between the absolute monarchies of continental Europe, especially France, and the English monarchy, which progressively became more of a formal institution rather than, absolute divine rulers. And I think the fact that at least here the characters are vulnerable and human in a way that probably in some other biopics they are not, because they are sort of the knowledge of the greatness of the historical figure sort of is a limitation. And in this case, I'm glad the film does not allow the reputation of the historical figure to be in the way of good character interactions and development, right?
Yeah, I'd agree.
And here, I mean, I like the cinematography as well when they are, I mean, riding through fields and it's
so beautiful,
big. But yeah.
So Norfolk's on the rampage.
Yeah.
I mean, just look how beautiful the blanket is.
Yes.
I mean, just every single part of this is so beautifully designed. The tapestries of the four-poster bed.
And yeah, that's also, it takes time to design all this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not easy. That's why I guess few people attempt historical epics, because then you might need to do all of this. You have to design it and you have to produce it, and then you have to make sure that it's not that it doesn't get damaged or anything.
Yeah. So anyway, the French are attempting to invade England via Scotland and Mary de Guise, and now this is her first true test of power, I suppose.
Mm.
Everyone looking to Elizabeth as to what she will decide.
Yeah.
And of course, as a weak-willed young woman, she wants to send emissaries in peace, but they're urging her to invade Scotland at once.
I mean, it's only weak because generally, like, films without conflict are not very, very interesting. So it's like, the one thing that people praise in films is when there's, action or something, which in this case would mean, I mean, if you have a war in a film, that's lots of action going on, lots of conflict. So it's like, the film itself frames diplomacy and sending envoys and that sort of thing as something of a weakness, when in actuality it would probably be the...
I don't know. I think that's unfair. I don't think the film is just saying war is good. I think that what they're just basically saying is that the men here are advising it because there's not the time.
Yeah.
So I think that's more the point.
It's also, she doesn't... I mean, she's the only woman here making a decision. She's obviously...
But she's got Walsingham.
Yeah, she's got Walsingham. But, yeah, I mean, in a sense that, in terms of the... I mean, she is a queen and not a king, which is why, these men don't respect her, because, because of chauvinism and all that stuff, right? It's because they don't feel that she's capable. And it's really, it's really to the strength of the film that, she is the most complex character in the film.
And actually, Walsingham is arguing for what you argued for, which is that diplomacy is the wiser route.
Yeah.
But we're starting to see the physical transformation of Elizabeth. So she's starting to look less like a girl. Her hair is in that sort of the tight curl we come to think of as hers, and the hair in plaits and put up behind. So I find it really interesting, this scene with the ladies in waiting. It's almost like they handle her like a reverend object.
Yeah.
It's almost like she isn't a girl anymore. She's become like a holy relic in the way it's staged. It's almost like a religious ceremony, the way they undress her and wash her. And
that's also, I mean, what comes back later in the film as well, when she talks about, what the people need to believe in, and it's the relic of the Holy Virgin Maria, and that's
it's incredibly clever, isn't it? I mean, if you've taken away the richness of the Catholic faith, arguably correctly, but you need to give them some iconography to replace it, and she will be that living icon.
Yeah. And, she's still considered England's greatest ruler, right? So that's,
Yeah. Oh my goodness, and here we have the horrid red coats of the assassinated, brutally murdered soldiers.
Mary Queen of Scots, which I think there's also a film about her with what's her name? The actress.
I don't know what you mean.
No, there's a film about Mary Queen of Scots, which I was just reminded of.
So actually, this battle scene reminds me most of Kenneth Branagh's Henry V, when they do the battlefield in France, and they start singing out the battlefield. It's very haunting. Yeah. Really beautiful scene in that. I really like that film, actually. It's one of my favourite Henry V's.
Oh, Vanessa Redgrave. That's
okay.
There was a film about Mary Queen of Scots about, with that actress, which I always found, she was also a very good actress.
Yeah. But Fanny Ardant, look at this, is brilliant. She's so magisterial. And
the blue is in really stark contrast to the red, obviously.
I just love how she rides out with the breastplate on, and
it's like,
she's so beautiful here.
The two opposing forces here are not men but women, obviously, in a historical context where women are generally not regarded as having much power in society. So it's actually really interesting in that way. So obviously she...
But it's a very different thing, isn't it? Like she has become queen, but without sacrificing her femininity. But Elizabeth will do the opposite. I mean, she will make herself... If people can't cope with a woman who rules, she'll make herself gender neutral, almost. Like, she'll take away what makes people... Like, what makes you a woman is your reproductive capacity, so she'll take that away. Whereas Fanny Ardant is a very, very sexy woman, so she's playing it as a real full-blooded woman, and that's the difference. Oh no. So now she's realising that going to war was the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
Always this high camera showing the true beauty of the architecture. I love it.
Yeah, I love the big architectures here. It's like, I wonder if they got. I mean, to get access to all that is very difficult, I guess.
Yeah.
But if you're making a film about one of England's most iconic rulers, then that's obviously...
Yeah, I'm sure the historic royal palaces are at your disposal. But that's the wonderful thing about filming in England. There are plenty and plenty of existing castles that you can use. And here we get inspiration from the portrait of Papa that happens to be conveniently hanging.
Yeah. I always found that a bit convenient as well.
It's a little bit cheesy, isn't it? That's sort of in the line of sight.
Yeah, but it's just like the weight that is hanging, that's on her shoulders here, because obviously, this man's legacy that she has to preserve, right? It's
and not that he was ever particularly successful in war. I mean, if you think about it, he in late life under Catherine Parr, his last wife, had that ill-fated expedition to France where he was going to march on Paris. Basically ended up capturing one castle that was quickly retaken and coming back with millions dead. Not millions, but hundreds dead. And he wasn't particularly successful.
No, but at the same time, he made some changes, obviously, in terms of his attitude towards the church and the papacy and that sort of. It's like not really caring what the Catholic Church has to say about to the King of England and that sort of thing. It's like there was definitely a change in terms of how the king behaves towards religious institutions, and he was obviously not really happy with Catholicism, obviously, and that's very.
So here we have Walsingham giving some real home truths, which is Of course you failed in Scotland because the bishops spoke against the recruitment drives, because they do not fear you. So the idea that it's not enough to be queen and say demand loyalty, they have to fear you. And you're not feared right now.
He's read Machiavelli, I guess, but can be you can be feared as long as you're not hated, right? You can rule.
You need to be both loved and feared.
Yeah.
At the same time, that's the tricky thing to pull off, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's all very well Queen Elizabeth creating the iconography of the Virgin Queen and being beloved, but she still needed Walsingham's spy networks.
Mm-hmm. I just have a question, like, total fandom question for A Song of Ice and Fire. Who do you think would be the Elizabeth equivalent in A Song of Ice and Fire?
Maybe Dany right now. Bad advisors going to warn advisedly in Marine.
Oh yeah, that's
I don't know. I mean, there aren't many female. Yeah. I think if Sansa had somehow got into power somewhere, she could have been a good equivalent, red hair and naive, and then become strong. I mean, I have this feeling that Sansa's going to end up on a throne, so.
I hope so.
Maybe, maybe at the end of the series it becomes a relevant parallel.
Yeah, good slap in the face to Cersei, obviously.
Yeah, and just as Elizabeth has seen her mother killed, very tragically, falsely accused, put on a spike, so has Sansa. Then they've both lived at the edge of court, not really knowing their position, and they're both pressured into marriages that they don't want, and
Yeah, they are. I mean, obviously, the fact that she's here that Sansa in the books is obviously the only known heir to Winterfell, who's still alive.
Sure, exactly. Like her claim is great, and if everyone else dies, it will end up to her.
Mm-hmm.
Well.
Let's hope so. I mean, I hope that it's Sansa, because obviously then Cersei can see the irony of the one who was always going to supplant me was around me the whole time.
Yeah,
I didn't think, but it's but yeah, let's go back, because obviously here now Elizabeth has been given the proposal of the French.
So the whole sissy thing. So this is the same Duke of Anjou, who we know from La Reine Margot is gay.
I think so.
So in that case, the depiction of him as the sissy is not. It's the same guy, isn't it? This Duke of Anjou is going to be the Pascal Gregory character.
But that would be still like sort of some kind of stereotype, because not all homosexuals. I mean, it's like if one is portraying a homosexual, then he has to be obviously effeminate, but that's not.
No, but he was there, wasn't he? I think the Duke of Anjou was known for dressing in drag and being in the.
Oh yeah, I mean, if
so I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm definitely not saying that that's necessarily like a generalization. I just think in this one case.
I mean, if it wasn't, then I would. If he didn't behave that way in real life, then I find it's a shame that they chose to portray him that way. But yeah, if it is actually true that he was somewhat of an effeminate man, and that this has nothing necessarily to do with his own sexual preferences or anything. I mean, I just I just wish that if whenever a character is homosexual, I wish that they weren't portrayed effeminately, because not everyone is the same, obviously.
Yeah, no, we totally agree on that. That said, I think that in this case, it probably is based on some historic document. Practicing the speech.
More about history is probably what we're supposed to take away from me. I like this scene where she has to prepare the speech. She always goes like she has to change the speech around, and my people are my care.
And it's a delicate thing, right? Because she's asking for their votes, but then she's also saying that she doesn't need the votes. Like, her consent is everything. So it's a very delicate position she's in. It always reminds me of your sort of president versus your cabinet. It's one rules by consent, but then again one does rule. It's a wonderfully written speech, I think. And the way she sits there in pure red. Yeah,
and they are all in black.
Yeah.
It's just, and Norfolk obviously very much against that, but in silence, which, it's important to note, because
and it's Richard Attenborough just looking very nervous. A single Church of England.
A single Church of England, yes. Yeah, the common purpose, yeah.
It's so funny because in modern time, I mean, one thinks of the Church of England as just being the most sanguine and banal of organisations, just sort of incredibly sort of, I don't know, harmless, mostly harmless, and yet here it's just this tool of radicalisation.
Yeah,
you forget.
Mellowed out.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, it's obviously still a question of religion, not just a question of diplomacy. It's how can I force you? I'm a woman.
But again, look at where the camera's placed. Like, whenever it shows her in this whole scene, it's always through the heads, like through the silhouette. So you almost see her as sort of, it's claustrophobic. It's almost like she's surrounded, like she's ringed by these people, and you can just peer through.
And we're mostly put in position of these religious people as well, right? We're sort of meant to be seeing ourselves as part of the crowd. She's separate. We are observing her in this scene.
This is great. No, Your Grace, this is common sense.
Yeah.
A most English virtue. That's wonderful.
But here,
she's going to charm them now. She's going to flirt with them.
Well, but they also managed to lock away some of the other some of the other.
Yeah. So that's my point. That it's this mix of love and fear. That she can be love and flattery, but she needs Walsingham. She needs the kind of the trickery behind it, and the two go together. It's very clever, I feel.
Yeah, and then obviously the issue of marriage comes up, which in that case is, she can always just turn it around and say, I'm married to England. And that's obviously what she's going to do as part of, that's obviously what she's going to do as part of her legacy, I would say.
Absolutely. But it's I just love how she gets her confidence.
Yeah, and Walsingham approves silently.
Yeah, of course, but it's like she becomes coquettish, like, who should I marry? One of each.
Yeah.
It's just so clever. She's playing with them. And like the guy says, you're making fun, and
he has been divorced like twice.
Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly.
It's like, men get to marry how often they want, apparently, and she has to make a fatal decision, which will last forever.
She sometimes reminds me of Margaret Thatcher in the way she plays with a mostly male house. And I often think, I know Margaret Thatcher, Meryl Streep did an amazing impression of her in a film that I didn't particularly like. But I would love to see Cate Blanchett maybe in a decade playing Margaret Thatcher. I think that would be quite interesting. I'm
on the opposite spectrum of Margaret Thatcher's political ideas, I guess. But at the same time, I still, I can still respect someone who stands up to what is a group of people with preconceptions about, women in authority and that sort of thing. So it's, there are definitely virtues to some kind of harshness, I guess, in your pursuit of your own goals, right? So it's
and I think she's someone who very much believed what she was doing was for the good, even if others don't agree, and it was very divisive.
Yeah, but that's why the discourse exists. We can disagree.
Mm-hmm.
and he also, obviously Walsingham is completely sure of his own support, and he's unquestioningly behind her. So that's an advantage also, even though I feel like she's only giving him reasons to support her as she becomes more self-assured. But I don't think that she gave him much of a reason to.
No, it's just pure loyalty to the state. I think, not wanting to see it riven. It's almost like he has the most religious belief because he has utter faith in Elizabeth even before she deserves that faith.
Yeah.
Because she has done nothing to deserve his loyalty, so to say, other than just merely being the legitimate heir. Beautiful. This is so beautiful.
Because he is loyal to the institution of the state.
Yeah, which is kind of like what Varys says in Song of Ice and Fire, right? I'm loyal to the kingdom.
The realm, even though, he's
not.
Yeah, there's like this chapter at the end of book 5.
Yeah. We know. But we shouldn't spoil that. We shouldn't.
No, we're not. I'm just gonna say that there's a chapter that sort of puts that in. Puts a big question mark on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's. Oh yeah, he obviously here the Duke is not actually the person who she is greeting there, but
no.
It's just, he's a prankster, obviously, I am Anjou.
Oh, these French jackanapes.
Yeah.
But it's important for us to know that she can speak French, that she is learned, And here comes Vincent Cassel.
Yeah.
He's still fantastic. I can watch him, honestly, in any film.
Public Enemy.
Honestly, any film I can watch Vincent Cassel. I was picking my films for the London Film Festival, and there's one starring him. I didn't need to know anything else. Just put it down.
Yeah.
Because he's always doing something crazy, charismatic, insane. I don't know. I find him very magnetic to watch on screen.
Yeah. He was in Black Swan, but in Black Swan, I don't think he was the standout.
He wasn't the craziest, put it that way.
No. He wasn't.
And the French king just comes in and, I love Eric Cantona's ambassador just rolling his eyes, thinking, oh my goodness, how embarrassing.
My goodness, what he obviously
But I'm very religious too, huh?
Oh yeah, that's true. Oh yeah.
Oh, and we're an hour into the film now, and it's been very dark and heavy, and I feel that this is almost Shakespearean. Let's just have a bit of comic japery, just to give us a moment to breathe before we go into the second half of the film.
Oh, and Daniel Craig showed up.
Oh yeah, pre-Bond.
Pre-Bond, yeah. But he doesn't say much in the film. He just he's this very convicted.
Yeah, looks brooding.
Yeah, it's like if the Da Vinci Code just became a good movie.
And Sir John Gielgud as the Pope, which is hilarious stunt casting. Just wheel him out of his retirement home.
I'm sad to say I haven't seen him in much, actually.
Sir John Gielgud?
Yeah.
He's, tremendous actor. There's a marvellous version of Richard II, which stars Derek Jacobi as Richard II, and John Gielgud's in that.
Oh,
and he does, the famous speech about the many-sceptred isle and all that. So, yeah, if you want to see one thing with John Gielgud in, that's a good one. He also did a version of The Tempest, which is very, very good.
Oh yeah, I'd love to see because this kind of film makes me actually want to read Shakespeare and that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so beautiful, and I wish because we have things like Deadwood, right? Mm-hmm. Where the dialogue is actually very much a product of the system, except for the swear words. So I wish that there would be a possibility to make a movie about this time period with Shakespearean dialogue when it's not actually an adaptation of William Shakespeare's work.
Yeah.
I'm saying that's
this is so beautiful, all these beautiful pleasure barges on the river.
Yeah.
It's just stunning, to be in this world.
And Lord Robert is still wooing the Queen, even though we all, the people who have already watched this know.
She's starting to look more queenie though, more jewels, more grown up, more makeup.
Yeah, but not like Queenie in Blackadder.
No.
No.
More. But it's just so decadent.
And it looks like actually a naval battle in a way, I guess. With all the fires in the background and at night on the river. On the lake, and yeah,
oh, it's so beautiful. Look at this.
It's not amused.
Fireworks in front of the palace.
But obviously his advisor is aware of why she's not interested. We got the earlier scene where he says, "Oh, I can't bring you anywhere." It's sort of this idea that
Okay, so we have the actual declaration, the actual proposal, finally.
Yes.
Which is a key moment.
A very big key.
Vincent Cassel is just hilarious.
Yeah. And, yeah.
Actually, Eric Cantona's good. At the time it was stunt comedy casting, but he's not bad.
Mm. And obviously, I mean, obviously now there's going to be. I mean, I wish that the Spanish representative was more present in the film, because it always seems like he's just sort of there. It's like, no, he's not really. I mean, he's doing something in the film. It's just like, it doesn't feel like he has that kind of presence that Vincent Cassel has or something like that. It's like, or it's very much a very quiet performance, I'd say.
Yeah, although maybe he's going to perform marriage now. Do you think that Sir Robert Dudley really thinks the Queen's going to say yes at this point?
No, I hope not. I hope he doesn't think that, because obviously it's very.
And even her lady in waiting, Emily, is just thinking, "Oh my goodness, don't say this publicly. This is so dangerous."
Yeah, and obviously there's an assassination attempt, so it's
for sure. I mean, like, you're making a mockery of Spain's claim.
Not just that, it's I don't know. It would be in the eyes of the people at the time, it would be seen as sort of a degradation of the position of the Queen, right? Because it's obviously, he's not royalty. He's just,
No, not at all.
So that's why it's probably also, I've never really understood who actually tried to kill her. I mean, if it was the Spanish or not, or if it was.
Well, it's the Pope via Daniel Craig, I assume, and so it could be.
It could. Yeah, it probably was the monk then. Yeah.
I don't know, because he also has to go later, doesn't he?
Well, he hasn't arrived yet.
Yeah.
So it's
I mean, I think the point is it could be anyone.
Yeah, it could be anyone. That's
like, she has so many enemies.
Yeah. And obviously, Lord Robert not amused, and obviously not now talking to the Spanish, which is the first signs of his treason, I guess.
He really is very callow. It's all ego, all pride.
And Walsingham is the complete opposite. He doesn't really show any sign of, arrogance or whatever. In a sense, he's just very practical.
Yeah, and I feel even with Cecil. I mean, Cecil is a loyal servant, and even at the point where Elizabeth says, like, "You're getting old now, I'm going to move you aside," he doesn't show ego. He will do whatever is necessary for the safety of the realm and the Queen, which is quite wonderful. But this treachery of Dudley I always found very, very convincing, because the way in which, and Joseph Fiennes I think is a great actor, because the way in which he plays him it's very strong. I mean, it's very macho, it's very protective, so if that's questioned, then to be sure he's going to flip.
Yeah. And I always liked the idea of, now we got a scene of deduction from with Walsingham and his assistant. I always felt that we needed something to prove to us that he's very capable in solving these mysteries and these plots and everything that he's. And I like the idea that they're trying to deduce who it was right away. And they're thinking of Norfolk, because Norfolk so far has not, he hasn't been outspoken or against Elizabeth. He's sort of been quietly disagreeing.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, it's still visible that he's not happy with Elizabeth being queen at this point.
That scene with Walsingham and Master Elliot trying to deduce and like talking him through how to figure out the logic reminds me a lot of scenes with Thomas Cromwell and Wolf Hall, Hilary Mantel's book.
Oh yeah,
where he has this little son, an adopted son, and tries to teach the
because
another character who stays quiet and in the background and just observes everything and secretly works out everything and is just ultimately loyal.
And obviously the Queen still quite disturbed by what happened.
What will a man not do for love? It's very Jaime Lannister.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true, actually.
Another man who was having sex with a queen and did very silly things.
Yeah.
Ugh, this is such a good scene.
The Duke still wants an answer, right? So it's oh man, yeah.
I love how in the successive scenes the dress of the ladies in waiting gets more and more ornate. That the subtle gradations of the costume here, I hope whoever did the costumes won an Oscar, because it's so brilliant. It's not just that the period detail is right, which is number one. I mean, that's the basic, getting the authenticity is perfect, but it's the fact that it actually shows the character changes. It's so well planned. Eric Cantona.
And now the idea is as secrets, right? Secrets, madam. You have no secrets, because obviously this is obviously putting everything out there, what he knows and what everyone else seems to know, that they are flirting in public and that sort of thing is not appropriate.
Yeah, and it's bad politics. I mean, what she did on the boat was bad politics, and she not that she deserved to have been assassinated, but you could see why people who cared about the health of England would want her dead, because you cannot be flirting with this guy when the French and Spanish ambassadors are right there. I
also find it very interesting that when he says he's already married, we don't see her reaction immediately, right? We only see her from behind, as the maids are listening, and it's sort of very much. I mean, I wonder why he hasn't told her that before, though, and why he has waited so long to come and tell her that Robert Dudley is already married.
Well, maybe they just thought it was an affair and that she wasn't really seriously considering him.
Oh, that's supposed.
I suppose this is the first time that he's really talking to her in private after the proposal. So, yeah. And again, like you say, they don't show the face immediately, they show her back, and then slowly she turns, and her face is very immobile, and then it sort of, as he leaves, it breaks. But, as she's just told one of her bishops, he's twice divorced, why could Dudley not have divorced? Yeah. If they really had wanted the marriage. The point is that it's not a marriage that's going to further England. She has to make an alliance. England's very weak.
Oh, this play, sort of like where they're playing like the ships and stuff. It's like it's something that you wouldn't. That's what they had to do, for the sort of this sort of play. It reminds me because we saw at least you still saw season 4 of Game of Thrones, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like the thing with the dwarves at the wedding.
Yes.
It's like this kind of thing here, but much less. I mean, much less awkward, I would say, except for the Spanish, because obviously he says, English pirates, and obviously sinking Spanish ships and that sort of thing. It's like it flies a bit in the face of what they're trying to do here, right? It's not. It's obviously not very, very of good form, I should say. Probably they should probably. It's of poor taste, I guess.
Yeah, but deliberately done, I think.
And
I do quite like the idea of the old sort of mass theatricals. This is what we did after dinner.
And I like the fact that we don't see the King of Spain, but they talk about him here right now, and they say, he's the most powerful man in the world. I wouldn't cross him for my life. It's this idea that you have very powerful people across Europe at that time, most of which are more powerful than the Queen of England at this point, but we don't see them in the film at all because they are so far removed. They are so powerful that you can't even see them.
Yeah, right? and months journeys away by sea at a time when sea travel was very dangerous. So hence the importance of the emissaries and ambassadors.
Which is why I think that it was an error to show, the King of Spain in the second film, I guess.
I agree. I completely agree. We should do the second film at some point. Even though I don't like it very much, but I think it's interesting as a contrast.
Takes much more liberties with history than the first one, I guess, is what my problem is.
Yeah.
I guess I can see, this is an adaptation that still has a lot of, that takes a lot of liberties with the historical facts and everything, but it doesn't feel like, it feels like some at least the story feels coherent and authentic.
Yeah, and I feel it's right on the main points, or it hits the main beats.
And obviously now the poor Duke gets rejected, or is about to be rejected.
And like everyone trying to stop her because they probably know what's going on, but this is a Walsingham brilliant.
And then
he just looks so innocent. He just looks like, I'm just standing around left. I have no idea where these people are all marching off to.
Yeah, and he's, and obviously the Duke is, what? It's like it's just something that he's used to. He's just normal for him.
Well, I just sort of think that he doesn't see this as any reason why he can't still sort of bonk the Queen and get her pregnant.
I mean, it's like when maybe he's bisexual. So it's,
and as we know from La Reine Margot, like the sexual, the sexual license was greater then. But I just think that the face of Cate Blanchett, as she just looks like sort of like a wryly amused headmistress waiting for the sixth form common room to realise she's just walked in.
She's just slightly, she looks a bit amused.
But I remember the first time seeing this in the cinema, I'm still not realising that this person in the corset was a man. And then he walks out the whole cinema just bursting into laughter. What? It's so fantastic.
Although I know, if you ever watch Pirates of the Caribbean, you'll try wearing a corset.
Yes,
it's that kind of. And he says the way she says, after an agonizing struggle, it's
exactly.
I mean, he's playing theatrical, and she's also
matching him, totally deadpan. Yeah. You're wearing a dress, Your Grace. Oh, and yes, I'm wearing a dress.
Yeah,
it's fantastic. Vincent Cassel, he's just so perfectly cast.
Yeah. And obviously swearing up yours.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a marvelous scene. And again, like I say, I think this middle section is so dark that you need a little bit of wry amusement.
Yeah, a bit of levity.
Exactly.
And the French ambassador is still hoping, but she's obviously now she's laughing about it, and it's obviously something that the other people around are not privy to, but she's still even though she knows, I guess because she knows that Lord Dudley is married, that she's calling him out now because she wants to I guess lure him into a confession or something of some sort.
It almost reminds me a little bit of, this is a bit of a silly thing, but in The Godfather Part 1 where the family has to sort of lure out all their enemies and then get rid of them in one go. Like, this is what she's clearing the decks. She's clearing the decks of France, of Spain, of Dudley, all these men who would have a claim on her. Yeah. She needs to have everything cleared away so that she can become the Virgin Queen. And that also, unfortunately, is going to involve clearing out Cecil in favour of Walsingham.
Obviously here she's in the first dancing scene that they had together, she was much less assured. Here she is much more very, very strict in the way that she dances, like very she doesn't she tries not to look at him directly as well, right? So she's always evading his she's evading eye contact, right? She's not trying to...
she's like a cat with a mouse. She knows that she's called him.
She knows what she's about to do.
She's called for the dance. She's going to publicly humiliate him.
Yeah, he says, "My Elizabeth," and that's not, that implies sort of this idea, chauvinistic idea of ownership, and it's very difficult.
The first dance was so joyful and genuinely passionate, and this one is just so sinister in a way.
I always felt bad. even though he wasn't straightforward with her about, his own marriage,
But I think he loved her, no?
publicly shamed like that in front of everyone else, especially if it's, about a romantic relationship, it's that's really humiliating, right? It's not, it's hard to, I mean, especially if it's, everyone's sort of looking at him now. It's like they're sort of like, is something wrong with you? Like, it's they're not saying anything, which is arguably worse.
I think it's, the problem is this Robert Dudley is a macho, protective, zealous, jealous guy, and he wanted his own advantage, sure. But I do feel at some point he did love her.
Yeah, no, I do too, but at the same time, it's like, he could have quietly done something, if he didn't love his own wife
get a divorce quickly.
He could have divorced her, probably.
Yeah.
Right? Even though I guess that would have made, it still would have been a public affair, right? She would have found out about it anyway. She would have. But
at least he could have been honest. He could have told her.
Yeah, if he had told her about it, and if he had said, I will divorce my wife, and go with you, if you will have me.
Who's going to understand more than her, whose own mother was allowed to marry her father because of a divorce?
Mm-hmm. But I guess I don't think if a woman had initiated a divorce procedure, that would have been looked upon very, very kindly in those times, right? It's like the man when the man divorces the woman, then that's okay. But if it's the other way around, we can't have that,
Yeah.
That's always a bit of a double standard. And obviously Daniel Craig getting back into the movie. Yeah. Because, here's the thing. He's a big time actor. I think at the time as well, right? He wasn't an unknown, I guess.
1998. He's not that well known. Okay.
Then maybe I'm wrong. Because I thought, if you're going to cast a great actor, because today he's a great actor.
Let me bring up his cinematography and I'll tell you.
Well, I like this scene by the sea.
Yes.
Where they arrive, where he arrives in the boat, and obviously,
So let's have a look. 1998. So far, all he's done is very little, actually.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Very, very little indeed. So after this, really, it wasn't until maybe he played Ted Hughes in Sylvia in 2003. Enduring Love 2004, so I would say it was another good 5-6 years.
Okay.
That he became Casino Royale was 2006.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say it was a while.
Yeah. So he's actually a fairly recent star, as well. It's it's not because it's not that. It's 10 years between 2006 and 2016. It's like
I'm trying to think. Like he played. He did the TV miniseries Sword of Honor trilogy, but that was in 2001, so even as a TV star. Actually, when was Mole Flanders? Because he was very good in that, and that became very popular.
And here, obviously, the boy gets exposed as a spy.
Yeah.
And that's rather sad because, it's like, he's actually being killed by religious zealot here, in a very brutal fashion, and that sort of it should at least remind the audience that the while Norfolk's interests and the priest's interests are, for the moment at least, the same. The reason why they hate Elizabeth, are not necessarily the same ones, right?
It's the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah, and it's it's like this man is he's violently beating a man to death for lying essentially, and that's it's something that I guess we haven't seen Norfolk do in the film, that sort of violence and impulsive violence, I guess. So
yes.
Different kind of person.
I mean, it's brutal. It's absolutely brutal.
Yeah, and I think that comes from the conviction that he has, at least from, and he also talks to the Spanish, obviously, so who is in on, at least now, that Norfolk, the Spanish, and the priest, and, the church, and some, they're all in on it. And there's also, the handmaiden who will become important later in the film.
Which is basically, I mean, not the known world, because it's not the Middle East and Africa, but it's basically all of Europe is ranged against Elizabeth.
Yeah, which I would have. I mean, you would say that today there's no way that if you had that many countries against you that you might be as a single country get away unscathed. But it's because of the very limited. And I mean, there's also this idea of a just war. You can't declare a war without a just cause, right? So it's like they need
casus belli. But I think it's also that I mean, England has always been furiously helped by the fact that you need to cross the sea to get there.
Yeah.
And if the Spanish could have marched in as opposed to having to send an armada,
then that might have been a different scenario. I agree.
Oh, the sad death of Isabel in the poisoned dress.
Yeah. I always wonder, like, how is it possible to put poison in a dress, like, and
you've seen La Reine Margot.
Oh yeah, that one. Oh, it's right. Yeah. No, I see. No, that's true.
You just put the poison as like powder in the folds of the cloth, I think. No.
Oh yeah. No, it's because I always, when I think of poisoning, I always think like, oh, you have to ingest it somehow. You have to drink it or you have to eat it.
Well, you have to take it into the body, but I suppose powder's on the skin, like so through the skin.
Oh, yeah, that's
like when you touch a poisonous plant. I suppose it's the same concept.
And we didn't talk about the fact that when Dudley was having sex with her, then he was. He was saying like my Elizabeth or something like that, right? It's like trying. I mean, obviously, making his motives a bit clearer, I guess, or at least how he feels about Elizabeth at this moment, right? He's sort of like, oh yeah, I want to have sex with her, and that's it.
But I think he loved. I mean, I do think he loved. I mean, there's all sorts of motives with Dudley, but I do think love is one of them. Genuine lust and love and.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's just like when she got rejected, or when he got rejected, he sort of like that sort of turns into something a bit more base. It's it's not something that is.
So the worst of the motives comes out on top when he's rejected. But that's human nature, I think it's kind of you can judge him, but he would.
He doesn't handle rejection well. Is what he can. So it's
he doesn't.
And here we have Walsingham going to see Mary, Queen of Scots.
Indeed.
Because obviously he wants to have a diplomatic talk, in a way. But I do like the details in the differences in the costuming when it comes to the Scottish and the they wear different kinds of armor, I guess is what I'm saying, and that sort of thing. So
it's very clearly color coded as a film. Like it's a period of history we do so much in school in England, and I'm so familiar with it. But I think it's beautifully done for people who maybe aren't familiar with the period, and to see, okay, we're at a different court.
Yeah.
You can see it very clearly from the clothes. It's like how Game of Thrones does it so well, that each of the kingdoms has a very different look. So you can just look at a prop or look at a costume and think, yes, okay, now we're in Essos, or now we're in Dawn. And I think the same's true here.
Mm-hmm. And obviously she's much more intelligent than he is. Yeah.
Oh, I do love Fanny Ardant.
Yeah.
I would love to see Fanny Ardant and Geoffrey Rush in a film together, another film that's just them, because I think they have great sort of chemistry as well.
I think the last big film that Geoffrey Rush was in was The King's Speech, wasn't it?
Yeah, probably.
Oh no, it was. Well, we're not counting Pirates 4. Pirates 4 is not.
I'm not counting. Yeah, the Pirates movie.
I cut the first one. The first one is.
I'm seeing a movie of his at London Film Festival, which is called The Daughter, which is a remake of an Ibsen play. but I don't think you'd count that as a big movie. He was in The Book Thief. I guess that would count as a big movie.
Yeah, that one as well. But that wasn't a big success critically either, I think, right? It wasn't that well received, was it?
No.
But I mean, yeah. I hope he gets another,
I do love him.
I wish he was in more... I mean, I wish he had more main character roles to play, because usually he plays a secondary character.
Have you seen him in the Marquis de Sade movie?
Yes, I have, Quills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really love that film.
Yeah, I love that one.
I think it's one of his best roles.
Yeah, even though he looks nothing like the Marquis de Sade was supposed to look like, because I guess he was overweight. And he had a fondness for chocolates and that sort of thing.
He doesn't.
At the moment, I don't, because I'm trying to, get into shape. But he obviously trying to seduce her, in a way. And he always had... I mean, he's a very absolutist person here. Obviously, he says there are just two choices, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And, she's obviously making allusions to something else.
Indeed.
Because, who doesn't like Geoffrey Rush? It's like, this idea.
But, just like the way she suggestively starts like caressing the penknife.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
But it's also an implication of what is about to happen, right?
Oh, for sure.
Instead of what she's thinking is going to happen, something else is going. But now we get this kind of attempt for them to reconcile, but it's like to reconcile. Sorry, and it's like doesn't really work. So he wants to be her friend. I guess in real life they stayed friends, right? In a way, they stayed. They didn't. I mean, they just weren't romantically involved at some point, right?
Yeah.
So the film takes a divergence there, I guess, in a way. It's also very interesting that they are the ones in white, right? The other ones are all in colored dresses and that sort of thing, and they are both because of the purity of their lost love, I guess.
Indeed.
And he's speaking on behalf of the Spanish, so. And yeah, this is turning from a political discussion to a personal one, right? Because
and it's so sad. I mean, like his eyes, he looks so chastened.
Yeah, you love me so much, you would want me to be your whore. That's it's essentially what it boils down to, because he's not ready to.
But how long does a divorce take when the Queen herself can surely just make it happen so quickly?
It's not that.
I don't understand.
She doesn't really forgive the fact that he didn't tell her before anyone else, I guess, is what I take away from this. It's like she doesn't. It's like he could have told her like at any moment, and he chose not to do so because he was
it's
more.
Never the crime; it's always the cover-up.
Yeah, in his own reputation, I guess. And yeah, now Mary Queen of Scots is dead, which I mean, from what
in reality did not happen because Walsingham went up to Scotland, evidently.
No,
I mean it was convenient, but that's not what happened.
No, but it's like still, it's like in the film she's. I mean, despite the fact that she was opposed to Elizabeth in the film, at least she's not shown to be an evil person or anything. So it's like. She says she never ordered it, and so Walsingham is sort of looking up. Oh shit! Should I have done this? It's like oh no, she didn't want this. Anyway, back to more backstabbing, I guess.
Well, literally, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and now she's sort of getting more self-assured and saying the word "must" is not used for princess and that sort of thing. It's like, yeah.
I never understood why Cecil was all like, you've got to publicly disassociate yourself from me. Oh, why? I mean, like, make yourself be feared. I mean, make people think that don't cross me.
No, but then, because it's, it's not how you want to be
an act
perceived.
of war.
You don't want to be perceived as someone who assassinates people in the night, right? It's like you don't want to be seen as someone who orders people to be cowardly, killed in their beds or whatever. It's
she looks even more like the iconic Elizabeth hair. The hair's getting higher at the top, the face whiter. It's slowly happening, people.
Yeah. Everything that happens is draining a bit more colour out of that face.
Tudor Queen Extreme Makeover Edition.
Yeah. And I feel like, that she has so many different haircuts in the film. It's like, it's there's I guess maybe when she was younger, she had the long at the beginning of the film she has the long hair. It's just like something that
very naturalistic, very girly, and now it becomes more and more like a sort of a helmet, like a hard sort of part of her regalia, as stiff as her ruffle.
Yeah,
I mean the reality is this would have been wigs, I guess, at the time rather than real hair. But she shaved back her hairline, didn't she, for this film? I think
so too, but I'm not sure.
Oh, this is so sad when she retires him off.
Yeah. But he doesn't, I mean, she makes sure that he knows that it's not because she bears him any ill will or anything like that,
And he still loves her, right? I mean, he leaves... Oh, it's so... To me, that actually is the pivotal moment when she really moves from him towards him. It's sort of...
Yeah, it's like you switch... I mean, they are...
Her style is going to change.
Yeah, opposing styles, obviously. And that's, the one that she chooses to employ now.
Aww. Breaks my heart, though.
And here...
And that's so sad. She sits alone at the head of her table, and I sort of feel that that's her life now, isn't it? Alone.
Yeah. And he's talking about the priest, obviously.
And he's saying what I'm saying, which is, look, don't be afraid to be associated with killing Mary, Queen of Scots, because, that's what makes you a great head of state.
Yeah. And she's just, very, very calmly listening to it when previously she would have been looking worried, at least,
Yeah, even if she's feeling worried, she's going to wear that mask that doesn't move. Yeah. Amazing, really, because we know Cate Blanchett has a very plastic face. Oh, and the Daniel Craig looking sinister. This is very Da Vinci Code, isn't it?
Yeah, no. Obviously, he's looking behind the wall and that sort of thing. Yeah, and so they're breaking into a house and trying to find the priest.
It's
Oh, no, that's
it's tough. She's had to toughen herself and close her heart off. So that's you can rule, but you can't rule with a heart. Basically.
And here, obviously,
little kitties. It's so emotive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's show there.
And now they are in a secret room with the priest, obviously. And Walsingham is not saying anything. He's just looking. And now we cut to Daniel Craig being tortured.
Isn't that a young Theon Greyjoy?
Alfie Allen?
Yeah, Lord Arundel's son.
I'm not sure.
I think it is, and I tell you why. Because his mother produced the film, Alison Owen.
Oh, really? I'm going to look up Alfie Allen.
Yeah, look up Alfie Allen and see if he was in Elizabeth. Because I'm pretty sure he has a small part in this film because his mum's the producer.
If he was... Oh, yeah, you're right. Arundel's son.
There you go.
Wow. Like, he doesn't look anything like that anymore.
Very chubby-cheeked and innocent-looking.
Now he looks like a corpse on Game of Thrones. No. And, yeah, torturing Daniel Craig is obviously very, very... it's a hobby for Walsingham, obviously.
But he's been so brutal, he deserves it. Mads Mikkelsen in Casino Royale is nothing on this.
Yeah. Oh, but burning you in the back is like, oh shit, that must hurt.
Not as much as having your nads beaten with a bat, which is what Mads Mikkelsen does to him in
Oh,
Casino
yeah.
Royale.
Yeah. Which Mads Mikkelsen, like, you know, when he's not Hannibal, he's something else incredible. I wished he was in this movie.
I actually watched a rather bad movie. Well, it's not bad, it's just a bizarre movie today called Charlie Countryman, starring Shia LaBeouf, and Mads Mikkelsen plays the sort of the evil ex-husband in it, but he's so hilarious. Like, I was literally laughing out loud at some of his lines. If anyone's a Mads Mikkelsen fan, they should seek it out just for his role.
I watched The Hunt recently.
Oh, I love that film.
Which is a very depressing kind of
And
statement.
don't you think it's amazing that someone that powerful, like physically powerful and big, can play a role that's so small and vulnerable and almost invisible?
Yeah.
To me, it's an amazing performance.
And here at least in this film, it's a sort of also the same thing, which we said already at the beginning, like with Cate Blanchett, is also like, you know, I wish she would play more of these roles where she's not, you know, this stern woman, because at some point I feel like she would probably, you know.
Well, I think you're in luck because she just won the. Did she win an acting prize at Cannes? No, I think that was Rooney Mara. But she's about to be in a film called Carol by Todd Haynes, which is based on a Patricia Highsmith novel from the 50s, where she plays this sort of very wealthy bourgeois woman who falls in love with a girl who works in a department store. So it's kind of like a lesbian love story at the time, and she's vulnerable and in love. And
I've seen the trailer for that one.
Yeah, I think that will be very different. And it's meant. I've seen the trailer. It's meant to be amazing. Also playing the London Film Festival.
Yeah. And here we see Norfolk sort of rationalizing what he's doing, like, you know, saying what he's going to do and why he's going to do it, and then sort of thinking of his legacy. You know, when they think of me, like they sort of, this is a very ambitious man who is sort of trying to be, you know, remembered for.
But she is very ruthless at this point. Like, she knows that. Elizabeth knows that once he has committed this treachery, he will be
executed.
Yeah. And by this point, she's gone from being the one who said, "Oh, but why can't we have teachers? And why can't we do this? And why can't we be diplomatic?" to let him hang himself effectively.
Yeah.
Let it all be done. He's like, she is a bit like Michael Corleone in The Godfather, which is right. Let's just make a clean sweep. We can't do this one by one.
But at the same time, we saw her. Look at the evidence that was presented to her as a result of the torture, and she says, you know, people will say anything under torture, so that's not reliable. Oh
yeah, so she's become cynical. She goes into it with her eyes wide open, but nonetheless, you know, whether the evidence is true or false, she knows Norfolk is a threat, and Norfolk must be eliminated.
I love the sound, the music for this one, for this scene here. It's like, you know, this singing.
It's a tremendous soundtrack, actually.
Yeah, I have the soundtrack. I
really? Oh yeah.
It's. I mean, it sounds really, you know, very, very. It's not medieval because it's not medieval time period, but it sounds very much like, you know, something of that time period.
Yeah.
And obviously, Norfolk having, you know, sex with the handmaiden.
But I like the idea of, in a sense, these great acts are done in, you know, all these people have been shown successively alone, shadowy, sitting in chairs in darkened rooms. So you've got the Spanish ambassador, Queen Elizabeth, Norfolk. It's, you know, all this great power, and yet they sit in these darkened rooms.
Yeah, and they're doing everyday things right now. And one is sitting on the toilet. One is, you know, performing a religious. Procedure, I guess is, you know.
Yeah, a religious act.
Yeah, and they're all getting murdered, and obviously Norfolk is having sex. So this is the most personal act. You know, it's something. It's the most personal situation you could find him in, I guess. It's the most intimate thing, and yeah, obviously, it's also like, you know, you're not really quite sure whether you like how it's being done, like, because Norfolk is sort of emotionally betrayed by someone who he seems to have affection for, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really, and yeah.
Self-flagellation. The glory days of the Catholic Church.
Yeah. That's also, and the children, obviously, they are going to lose their parents. So it's
So it's right that she's praying, but it's right that it's done, I suppose, if you believe in the need to keep the country. I mean,
there should be room for, room for redemption, shouldn't there? Or for rehabilitation, I guess.
Mm.
There should be room for mercy as well, which obviously Elizabeth shows later in the film, but it seems odd that she would, show it to the person that ends up receiving mercy instead of, the parents of these two children who are, essentially getting executed and seem rather remorseful about what they did, right?
Yeah. It's worth noting that the way Shekhar Kapur shows violence is he always shows the kind of the shadow coming at them and then the blood afterwards, but you imagine it, but he actually doesn't show much actual the specific seconds of violence.
No.
It's very clever.
Yeah. But I find it interesting that Norfolk doesn't really, he just looks at her very quickly and he doesn't really react otherwise.
Mm.
And he says, but you had not the courage to be loyal. And that's,
But it's true, because I think it did take courage to be loyal to Elizabeth at this point, to be loyal to a frail queen. Walsingham, it takes courage for him. He's picked the losing side in a sense.
Yeah, when Norfolk believes himself to be a martyr, right?
Yeah.
So the idea of, that they will remember him that way, but Walsingham says, they will forget. And that's also true in a way.
I love his, I must do nothing by your orders. I am Norfolk.
Okay. Yeah, I am.
You were Norfolk. The dead have no titles. It's that's beautiful dialogue.
Yeah.
And he knows the woman has betrayed him.
Which is why, once again, it's such a shame that the second movie turned out so
sucky.
Yeah. There is the TV miniseries on Elizabeth with Helen Mirren.
Yes, it's much more. Have you seen it?
Yes, I have seen it.
Okay. What did you think?
I think it shows the Queen in a much different, in a bit of a different light. A bit more critical of the Queen.
Well, much more as a real woman, an old woman, a woman who must have her fancies and her young men, and it's funnier, it's bawdier, yes.
Yeah.
More ordinary in a way, I think.
Yeah, it's not as obviously as impressive visually as the film here, right? It's just, to me, the idea is that it feels like there are moments where you actively disagree with the Queen, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas here in the film, you're sort of more meant to root for the underdog who becomes, the person in charge, right? It's a different interpretation, I guess, because when we were talking about the second film, I was thinking back on the execution that happens, where that Elizabeth is responsible for, and the way it's shown in the miniseries is actually rather brutal. It's like, it's a botched execution,
Yeah, it's horrible.
Which I don't think this.
Dudley.
Yeah, and it's he's saying like, it's like, you go too close, you get too close to the shining bright star, you sort of burn. That's I guess the idea, sort of that he can't bear being close to her, but he also can't bear being away from her. That's the thing, because he says, it would be probably, it's hard, if you are not if you're not the person who is, on equal terms with, the one the person you love, right? He's sort of subordinate to the queen. But
it's a little bit like House of Cards season 3, where this marriage that has survived so much as the man becomes president of the United States, this very equal power marriage, crumbles when finally he does become president, because of course it's the last place that the wife can't follow him to. They can't possibly be equal at that point, because whatever he gives her as a sop, it'll never be equivalent to his power. And it is corrupting, and it does break relationships, and that's what has happened here. I feel very sorry for Dudley here.
Yeah, I did too. Because, at least because the character was three-dimensional in a way that, you believe whatever he says. And obviously Norfolk now gets the job. So,
but I feel that it's not mercy that makes Elizabeth keep Dudley alive. Like you say, why does she not forgive the two people who have the little kids? I think she's almost punishing him more by keeping him alive, because he asked to be killed.
It's a bit more cruel, actually, to keep him alive, right? And now, obviously, we get the big speech about the symbolism.
Which is just one of my favourite moments in all of cinema.
Because it's it takes religious symbolism and, makes it visually compelling, like in a way that matters to the story. Because obviously, when they talk about the Virgin Mary and that sort of thing, and all this.
Well, in a movie that's just been entirely and utterly about religious divide, and then in a sense, this is her not uniting the realm, but for a woman who starts the film saying, "Oh, but can't we just have both?" I mean, she's now making herself like almost I don't know how to express it properly, but
she's making herself into an idol.
Yeah, exactly. Like for a woman who said religion can be.
Yeah,
it's just what was it? It's just a little thing, or a silly...
It's a small question.
A small question, exactly. Yeah. And now she's going to make herself a religious icon.
Yeah, I guess but still, I'd say for people who are obviously not religious in a way, it's probably something that they would say, well, she's sort of abandoning something of her critical thinking here when she says, I'm going to make myself into an idol, sort of resting on a religious idolatry and the respect for the religious institution of
But I think it's also convenient, isn't it? Like to turn yourself into the one particular religious icon that means that she doesn't have to marry anybody.
Yeah. It's
so neat. It's so elegant.
At the same time, she's sort of like compromising in a way that doesn't really. I mean, does it? Yeah, it does cost her in a way that she chooses not to be. That she chooses to be. Without husband, without marriage, without all that, but at the same time, she's making a decision that is obviously to her advantage here.
Yeah, she's going to sacrifice the personal for the political, which is she'll keep the Tudors on the throne, but at the expense of a Tudor heir. I always love Emily Mortimer in this scene where she's cutting the hair, so. Because she knows she's losing the girlishness, the friend that she had, that now her queen is going to become something utterly alien and different and unique. It's so like all the emotion we should be seeing in Cate Blanchett, we see in Emily Mortimer.
This shot right here with the short hair, I think when you didn't see season 5 of Game of Thrones, but the Walk of Shame in the book, right? Yeah, when you look at Lena Headey and you look at this, you feel like, this is probably an inspiration for that.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, in that case, it'll be very cool
because they shaved off her beautiful hair.
But it's just brutal. It's just like
Yeah.
Like a self-abnegation, like a self-mutilation almost.
Even though I think prefer with that short hair though. Yeah, I mean, she looks accessible in a way that she doesn't when she has these elaborate wigs on.
Yeah, true, but not as delicate as she was as a young girl, though.
Yeah.
So here we go,
Here we go, yeah. Totally white.
The hands, the way the paste is rubbed in, which is killing her, right? It's the sort of...
And the light coming from behind, it's very...
I think you're a little bit ahead of me, but...
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Don't worry, but yeah, it's...
Yeah, when she shows up.
Mm.
And Lord Burleigh, obviously now.
Poor guy.
I am married to England.
It's just before she becomes the queen and she's just no makeup with the short hair. She looks so. She looks like a 6-year-old boy. I don't know how they've done it. Maybe by making her eyes reddened, and she just looks like nothing.
Yeah, and then she,
Here you go. So now I have her coming through the light as the queen.
Yeah. Walks out there like
stunning,
a big religious symbol.
This very alien thing. It's so beautifully filmed.
Yeah.
I find it weird that Dudley would be back at court to see her, though. I mean, I know he's been let off, but would he really be sort of back at court? I don't know. Would he not be sort of off in exile?
I mean, this is where the historical facts and the film differ, right?
Yeah, for sure. The ultimate sacrifice.
Mm-hmm. It's like Dudley is now just one amongst how many subjects. It's not, she's not accessible in a way anymore that she used to be.
She does look magnificent though. This massive pearl encrusted ruff. It's tremendous.
And then obviously you have all. I mean, she's white against gold and red. And is Walsingham crying now? I'm not sure.
People kissing the hem of her skirt like a religious relic. And her ladies in waiting have all taken white as if they're going to First Communion. It's amazing. And the pearls and pearls.
They say she never saw Dudley in private again, right?
Really?
Yeah, at the end.
Yeah. She looks like a portrait. It's so beautifully done. That's
why it, holds on her face for a moment without any movement, sort of.
Yeah. There you go. I love this film so much. I just it's amazing. It's
atmospheric in a way. Has a lot of, great actors, or some actors who would become great, as we see.
Yeah. All that promise.
Yeah.
The concept that this, again, I'll say, it's not that I hate Shakespeare in Love, but the concept that this did not win out over Shakespeare in Love is just ridiculous to me.
Yeah, but that's the Academy. The Academy is sort of I don't know, they seem to prefer, sometimes they prefer cliches to
feel-good movies.
Truly, there are other examples, right? There's Crash, that one, over Brokeback Mountain.
Yeah, I know. Ridiculousness.
Yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah, we should. Maybe we can at some point talk about big Oscar fails or whatever.
The epic Oscar fails. But yeah, this is a wonderful movie, and awards don't matter. Quality stands the test of time.
Yes, and I feel like there's always something new to be found in this film, because you can either look at the sets or the costuming and all this detail, all this effort, and you can always find something new that you hadn't noticed before. And it's rather rewarding in a way,
because it is a very intricate story involving so many different characters and so many different issues, right? That you can sort of find something interesting every time.
Indeed. Well, I hope the listener enjoyed this discussion of Elizabeth as much as I enjoyed rewatching it. So thank you so much for suggesting, prompting, and then participating, Matthieu. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, always. Yeah, I love to explore, eras that were, so far. I mean, they're so far away now when you think about it. It's like hundreds of years. So that's always very interesting to me. And yeah, the fantasy stuff obviously is because it draws so much on medieval Europe in a way that other genres don't. So
absolutely.
That's fun. Thank you for having me.